Welcome to Decode Dune, an exegesis of the Dune universe.
Okay, so if we're starting over, we're on page 125 of our edition of Dune. I'm not going to read it again, but just the intro talks about
Why not?
Paul. What?
Why not?
Okay, I'll do it. On that first day when Mahdi rode through the streets of Arrakis with his family, some of the people along the way recalled the legends and the prophecy, and they ventured to shout Mahdi, but their shout was more a question than a statement, for as yet they could only hope he was the one foretold as the Lisan al-Gaib, the voice from the outer world. Their attention was focused too on the mother, because they had heard she was a Bene Gesserit, and it was obvious to them that she was like the other Lisan al-Gaib. That is from the Manual of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan. Real quick, I meant to include this in the last show's marketing, and then I got distracted. So it's now 2 weeks past, but I had my 1 year anniversary of the day I picked up Dune for the first time about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that, just a little inside track. I had told Jeff about 2 or 3 months before that I was thinking about it, and he was like, "Oh, you got to read Dune." And then I started, and he's like, "Once you get far enough along to talk about it, we should record it and just kind of, I don't know, share it with people or something." And here's where we are.
Look at how far we've come.
Episode 11.
Yeah.
So what's going on in this intro? Mahdi. Okay, so Mahdi is sort of the Mahdi means the rightly guided one. And I'm gonna skim through the Wikipedia on this real quick. Mahdi means translates to the rightly guided one, and is an I got it right the last time, but eschatological messianic figure who, according
do you know
to,
that's a big word. Do you know what it means?
End times.
End times. That's right.
Yeah. There's actually in speaking of our parallel universe Infinite Jest podcast. Remember they play that game called Eschatology in Infinite Jest. It looks like, is it a computer game in that book, or is it like it's a strategy game? But I can't remember if it's like a tabletop game or it doesn't matter. But the Helen Condenza and his tennis academy friends play it, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So it's an eschatological messianic figure who, according to Islamic belief, will appear at the end of times to rid the world of evil and injustice. In Muslim traditions, it is said he will appear alongside Jesus Christ and establish the divine kingdom of God. According to the hadith of Jafar al-Sadiq, the shining face of the Mahdi will become visible on the face of the moon to herald his coming. And once among men, the Mahdi will help humanity cleanse their hearts by all evil by means of the name of God.
So they were predicting the end of capitalism, similar to Marx.
Yeah.
Right. So they just had a more poetic language for what happens when you run out of land to distribute, and,
right.
And you lose the reins of your means of production.
Yeah.
Or maybe or not. I can't.
Maybe. So obviously, yes.
So the rightly guided one.
Right.
Right. And then the Lisan al-Gaib. Al-Gaib means subtly hidden. It typically refers to belief in things that are subtly hidden from you, like angels and deities.
Jinn.
So, absolutely.
So why are they looking at Jessica? They're looking at her knowingly, and it is because when they say she looked like the other Lisan al-Gaib, what they mean is the Bene Gesserit who some time ago was down on Arrakis doing the work of the Missionaria Protectiva. What's interesting is with the Fremen being on Arrakis for, I believe, 3,000 years, if that happened right at the beginning of the Fremen's appearance there, I've said this before, actually, because just a spoiler for future books in the Dune series, the Bene Gesserit do not appear to have any wardrobe changes for thousands of years. They don't appear to update their outfits. So I'm just mentioning this because they recognize the appearance of Jessica as being very similar in appearance to the other Bene Gesserit, who was doing the Missionaria Protectiva work, which we know from previous episodes is obviously it's a password concept of seeding a planet with sort of local religion and fables, which would help out a Bene Gesserit if there was ever a time in need. In this one, as also mentioned in one of these chapter intros, there's an ironic just the way, actually it was previous in this book actually that there was one of the chapter intros talks about the idea that the time and place in which Paul arrived on Arrakis was ironic, that they had already the Bene Gesserit Missionaria Protectiva, and also the idea of that a male son, not just a Bene Gesserit on her own, but a male son would play an important role in sort of the religion of the locals. So there Paul is, they're doing some sort of Archduke Ferdinand kind of going through Sarajevo, on a concave.
What could go wrong?
JFK, shaking, waving to the crowds. And obviously you have Leto, you have Paul, and you have Jessica. They're doing that whole thing and glad handing people, and probably not glad handing people.
Yeah, I want to focus on the people who are asking the question or making the statement. So the people calling out, calling him Mahdi. These people, I'm just going to read a thing. This is from Essential Sufism, which is a really great resource for understanding a little bit of what's going on. Also, Sufism, amazing. But here we go. So this is from chapter 5, The World Mirror of the Divine. So this Lisan al-Ghaib, I think this really sums up for me how I think about this prophecy and how it's applied to, or this idea and how it's applied to Paul and his mother.
Mm-hmm.
A Bedouin was once asked how he could believe so strongly in a God he could not see. The man replied, "If you see the tracks of a camel in the desert, do you have to wait to see the camel itself before believing it exists?" The world is our mirror. It mirrors our faults, our failings, as well as the divine within each of us. As one sheikh has said, every rose is the reflection of a smile or a kind word, and every thorn is the result of an unkind word or action. The task for the Sufi is to polish the mirror of oneself so that one can catch the reflection of heaven during life, unmisted, undistorted, and in all its glory. So the role that I think it's sometimes misunderstood, the role that prophets play, the role that like any religious steward in Islam plays. But it is there. This is also true in Buddhism, which is I often thought it was an interesting mix, and I just think it's important to say this is also true. The exemplars of the faith help common people to see what would otherwise be hidden. So, the bond between prophecy and like the potential for living people to fulfill that prophecy is very strong. It's as strong as the bond between the laity and the priests in Catholicism, or the bond between the laity and the monks in Buddhism. Mm-hmm. Because, especially in Buddhism, where the belief, I don't think it's any different actually, but the belief is that these monks are perfected beings, mm-hmm. spiritually perfected. In some way, that's how they, especially in the Tibetan tradition, the reason they're monks at all is because they have progressed in some way along the path.
Yeah.
So these are examples of things that would otherwise be hidden from us.
If you ever look at Eastern Orthodox monks, mm-hmm. They have really awesome outfits. I believe they're called megaloskemos, which means the great. Yeah, megaloskemos, which means the great skemos, which the skemos itself is the the robe, right? And sort of the accoutrements you get with it. And you base it kind of has like a merit badge quality where you go from a basic one to a Megalo one by acts of piety, by sort of time in service, by, kind of getting promoted to that level. And at the end, when you get to that highest level, you have what could only be described as a real pimp fucking outfit. To showcase that to everyone. And then a black metal band called Batushka will take that and they will wear those on stage. And then the band will break up and then there'll become two bands called Batushka because the guitarist wants to maintain the name. And then so does the singer, and Metal Blade Records buys the rights to the singer's version of it. And they release one album and everyone trashes it and they call it faketushka.
I love it. That's exactly what's happening. No, this is a model for what's happening in the Sitges as Paul and Jessica are parading down the street, right?
Jeff, I don't know if you're familiar with the saga of the black metal band Batushka from Poland and their schism.
I am now.
Subsequent faketushka, batushka. I believe even the faketushka was kicked off the record label. Anyway,
yes,
they had to cancel a tour. This is before COVID. They had to cancel a tour because no one would buy tickets to their concert.
The best.
Sorry, I can't believe I just went down this wormhole.
It's not that much of a wormhole because it's literally like this is what happens in every religion, like right. So we're talking about the idea that the fulfillment of some prophecy is potentially present.
Yeah.
Also, you're foreshadowing how all of this is going to go later. We don't really have to talk about the later books.
Yeah.
But things are going to go shitty just like they did for that band. It's I think unavoidable at some point, right?
So faketushka under the name Batushka tried to plan this world tour in 2019, and all of the websites came out and all metal sucks or metal injection all came out and said don't buy tickets, this is the faketushka. So they had to cancel the entire tour. Then they faketushka just released an EP, and it literally there's reviews of it, and then you can see updated in, not in the URL, but in the preview, it says updated, sorry, this was the faketushka release, don't bother listening.
Yeah, so basically this is Jamis's whole fucking jam, right? I think you're the fake Mahdi. Let's find out. I know that's maybe skipping ahead a little bit, but he's like, so probably Jamis writes for Kerrang or some other metal magazine.
Yeah.
He's like, nope, these are the wrong ones. We got to fight him with knives.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so we'll get to that later. Sorry if I just spoiled anything for you, but fuck you. I think we said at the beginning, spoilers aplenty. Okay, so anyway, I love this because, meaning I just love this introduction. So this chapter really has very little to do with what we're so heavily indexing on, but this is one way that Herbert drives exposition into his on the ground reporting of what's happening. Mm-hmm. The other way, Mike, I know this is of interest to you. The other way he does it is by projecting people's thoughts and feelings based on their actions. And so I think there's plenty of that in here that we could talk about.
Yeah. I don't know if you were teeing me off for this moment where Thufir says to, so Thufir comes in with a report and he tells, hold on. Let's take a step back. This is where I mentioned it in the previous episode because I got confused. That last chapter was so long that there was so much in it. I was like, did this already happen or not? Leto officially commissions a raid on Gedi Prime, which is the Harkonnens' planet. He says, take out their spice their spice, the secret storehouses of spice. Because it's contraband, they won't be able to really complain about it to anyone. So, they're just going to lose their ability to sell, so
it's a long tradition of drug dealers stealing other drug dealers' drugs.
Right. That's what I was saying in the last episode is if someone steals your kilo of Coke, you can't go to the police about it. So it's just gone. Same or your drug money, right? If it's not reported to the IRS, it's cash, right? So
civil forfeiture at its finest.
Right.
Our police force learned that lesson early in the drug wars, and we're like, oh,
yeah.
Anyway,
if I were, it would be so hard to not be a crooked cop. I honestly believe. I mean, just the access to things where you could just grab one stack and report the other 10. I mean,
Mike,
like what fucking difference does it make?
Mike.
I mean,
they're all cops are good, except the very few who are caught. Those are bad. Now let's stop talking about this.
I'm just saying potentially victimless crime, right? So I see 20 I bust a drug dealer. He has $100,000 stacks wrapped in saran wrap or whatever they do. And you're like, one for me, one for Joe Q Public. Why? Dude. Because I'm on site. I risk my life.
Yeah.
I blah, blah, blah. And this is a finder's fee. And I'm going to make sure they even did it in Breaking Bad.
Dude, it's so common that police departments, it's been made law. It's called civil forfeiture. So if you do, like, we should not get into this too deeply, but so if a cop stops you for, I'm involved in a side debate here and so feel free to, crucify me, but the side debate that I'm involved in here.
Wait, with me or like
no, out in the world.
Okay.
Fucking whatever.
Yeah.
Where you go to do out in the public square. My soapbox is this: you don't need a badge and a gun to do a traffic stop. What will cops tell you? They will tell you that traffic stops are actually the most dangerous. What's the truth? You have a 1 in 6.5 million chance of being killed during a traffic stop. That's how many. So one policeman for every 6.5 million traffic stops is killed. It's okay. Yeah. I mean, your chances of being attacked by a shark are better. So anyway, though, these ideas of like, one of the reasons they like to remain involved is because it's revenue generating.
Sure.
And what better way than to simply seize cash from the motorist. So if you're a motorist carrying cash and you're stopped, that money can and will be confiscated. It is then used by the police department to buy equipment, and it goes right into their coffers.
Especially if you have an unseemly, obviously, if you have an unseemly amount that your station in life or whatever doesn't seem to, people have had to justify like, no, literally, I happened to randomly take $30,000 from my bank, put it into cash, and then why? Because I was going to go enter a poker tournament or something, and that was the buy-in.
That's exactly right. Or like they have to do legitimate cash transactions. This happens all the time. There's a guy who transport. I know a person who does this, and they are more worried about police seizure of their money. They manage ATMs. They are more concerned with police seizure of the cash than they are with being robbed. They're prepared for both, but that's the thing they worry about the most.
Wait, in managing ATMs, they probably have like a business card and they're behind an actual like an LLC that has like insurance.
Doesn't matter if in
like the way what I mean is in the cop sees this and goes, this still smells fishy, or I mean.
I guess I don't want to get too deep into this. I'm not a cop, but here's what I would say. It does not matter. So there's a long conversation we could be having about whether, so one question, is it the job of a police officer to determine guilt or innocence? No, that's what the courts are for.
Right.
Right. But they make claims like this all the time when they do civil forfeiture. So if you have a bunch of cash in your car and they seize the cash, you have to go through quite a bit of red tape to get it back. And as you might imagine, police departments who have been underfunded since the 2008 economic downturn,
right,
need ways to pay their rent and
yeah,
buy Bearcats and other cool equipment.
yeah.
And this is one way that they accomplish it.
Yeah, where I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, my view of policing in Cleveland, especially compared to LA where I live, is I believed every municipality was literally just daring you to do something that they could pull you over for. Because they wanted,
Yep.
I mean, in this case, I'm talking about in the form of tickets. No one ever said, how much cash do you have on me, or search my car. But it was just every time you went 1 mile over the speed limit, or they got behind you and rode your tail. And when you got reasonably nervous for just normal run of the mill, a cop who can take my freedom from me is riding my tail. Now I'm dealing with anxiety, and now I'm going to accidentally do something more from the anxiety. Boom. Here we pimped us too. That's one of, I lost my license for 6 months. I got like 6 tickets. So I had moved from Atlanta, where they call, I think it's the 404 is the loop of the city. They called that like the 404 Speedway or something. Yes. People are known to drive fast there as much, and they're known to drive fast here in SoCal as much as the traffic will allow you. But like, I moved back from, I got 1 ticket ever in Georgia. Now it wasn't in Atlanta. I moved back to Cleveland. I got 6 tickets within like a year and a half, just from things that like were normal to me over the course of the several years I lived in the South. Right. I just kept getting tickets. And I was considered like a public menace by the people of Cleveland, the Cleveland area, and the county, and I lost my license. It was pretty crazy because I had never been in an accident. It was just all chicken shit stuff. It cost me a lot of money. I moved out to LA, no ticket. I've gotten like 2 parking tickets. It's just the difference in how they choose to do the policing. Anyway,
hold on.
Yeah.
I want to say a thing since we opened up this can of worms before we slam the lid down. Why are they doing that?
This is the money.
Well, yes, but we have a narrative. Like you see a cop pull somebody over, and we think we know why police do it. That person was potentially breaking the law. Cops are there to uphold the law. It's like it. We don't even question why this is occurring at all. But part of the history here is related to the enforcement of Jim Crow laws, and prior to that, the slave patrols, constraining the free movement of slaves, and then freed slaves, and then of course Black persons, has been a big part of policing since the 1700s.
Of course,
we don't ever think about it or talk about it. We think it's just natural that a cop pulls somebody over for a broken taillight, but it actually
I don't. But yes,
right. But I think societally we just think it's an important key function. No one likes it.
And this is what a lot of the activism is about: is that it negatively affects a lot of. This is not like an all lives matter thing. It disproportionately negatively affects people of color, of course, but it's a negative aspect of our society for everyone. Right.
Yeah. The truth is, like, so. Again, this whole thing stems from a thing that Henner was talking about, and then it devolved into a weird conversation. Henner Gracie.
Oh, okay.
This whole question of like good cop, bad cop, and should bad cops have jujitsu, and are there bad cops? And listen, I have friends and family in law enforcement. You won't get a narrative from me that says that this isn't potentially a dangerous job. But to be honest, roofing, far more dangerous. If you look at the statistics, right? Agriculture, far more dangerous. Like there are many, many routine jobs that we never think about, for which the risk of death is exponentially higher than to be a police officer. But the job is still dangerous, and there are scenarios in which police officers are legitimately hurt, and so are citizens. And the truth is, the driver, the person in the vehicle, is 4 times more likely to be injured. 4 times.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, it's dangerous. If it's dangerous for the police to stop traffic offenders, it is 4 times as dangerous to be stopped. And so there is this question of why do we do it? And the modern answer, even though it's rooted in these issues that have been with us for some time, the modern answer is largely because it's a financial driver for local police departments. Now, that doesn't mean that the people in those systems are, and I want to make this clear, it doesn't mean that they're plotting this. We just accept these things as part of the system, and so we don't really question where the money goes. Or
right.
So I'm not making the claim that cops are like conniving to do this. They're trained to do this job. This is part of what they learn to do when they go to the academy, and it's an expectation of every day on the job. We've just sort of internalized all of that. But when you look at the actual impact and what's happening,
well, yeah, go to
easier to see.
I mean, go to Norway. They'll take more of the money out of your paycheck.
Yes.
Right. And then the cops won't do that instead.
Yeah, I was pulled over for speeding on the Autobahn, which won't surprise people. But
some parts of it have a speed limit. Yeah, of course.
They do. Yeah. So I was trying to get to Munich from Austria, and I was in a hurry, and I was going approximately double the 80-kilometer speed limit. And it was at the time that the World Cup was happening. So there were lots of tourists all headed in the same direction. Anyway, lots of police involved in this traffic operation, but they literally were standing in the middle of the Autobahn, waving people over at the top of this hill. I pulled up to what looked like an ice cream truck. I gave them my passport and my identification. They said, "Stop speeding," and goodbye. And then like a month later, to my US address, I got a packet outlining the crime that I had committed and the penalty and my options. So a good friend of mine in Munich went to the local police department and paid my fine in cash for me. And I accepted a reduced fine. It was like 350 euros and then no impact on my driving, or it was like 75 euro and my license to drive would be suspended for 6 months. And since I was already back in the US, I was like, I'll take that version. And he went and handled it for me personally, but I could have just responded through the mail. Mm-hmm. No, so badge yes, gun no. There were no guns present. Mm-hmm. Yeah, mm-hmm. And that's the norm in most of the world. And I'm not saying that police don't need them. Like, I'm not making broader claims. I'm only saying for traffic violations, given the potential danger on both sides, this is one of those things where reallocating funds to different programs, including like just the cameras, right? Mm-hmm. Speed cameras and those kinds of things, seems better. Mm-hmm. Safer.
All right, Decode Dune fans. So you have gotten in this episode so far a diatribe about a Polish black metal band having a breakup and name
Tell them
controversy.
What they've won.
And now some comments about policing and things of that nature for one page of Dune.
It's painful, I'm sure.
So the raid on Getty Prime is a go. Smash their shit. They can't complain about it to anyone.
Take their shit. Yes.
They'll just lose the money, or you'll take the spice. Let's see here. Then okay, so this is what you were teeing me up for. I'll just make one more comment about the police. I also got pulled over. I got pulled over in Norway, fully removed from the car and breathalyzed. I was terrified. Mm-hmm. And I think because they knew about American policing, they were empathetic with my, oh, you are an American. You probably think it's going to be different than what it is. This is just more of like a friendly. Someone called the cops and said that I was driving weird and that I might be drunk. Yeah. Actually, I was just taking pictures of things while driving, and didn't fully understand the way the lights would kind of flash green. I was like, mm-hmm. Is that green? It's not fully clear. And I was in a small northern Norwegian town, so even less happening than like Oslo. This was in Bjodo, I think it's pronounced. Anyway, so
I got.
Oh, and by the way, there was 2 female officers and 1 dude. They were gorgeous. They were fucking straight up 9 out of 10 fully fucking babes.
Yeah.
The one looked more sort of Italian, and the one looked more like your stereotyped Nordic variety, but they were babes.
Yeah.
And then the dude showed up, and he was sort of like a, you know, like a Hans guy. Oh yeah.
Oh.
There's no need to be nervous. Not really a Norwegian accent, but okay. So Jeff, you were teeing me up.
Yes.
Because, FYI, we lost a recording and now we've started over.
Yeah.
So there's this consistent thing that keeps happening in this book where, as Jeff was commenting, people motivations are read into and decisions are made according to how people are acting. So
which is how you should run your relationships. It works.
Yes. So yeah. So there's this as you say, my lord, Hawat turned away, and the Duke saw evidence of nervousness in the old man, thought, perhaps he suspects I distrust him. He must know I've private report of traitors. Well, best quiet his fears immediately. And he says, Thufir, since you're one of the few people I can trust completely, there's another matter that bears discussion. We both know how constant a watch we must keep to prevent traitors from infiltrating our forces, but I have 2 new reports. So anyway, just interesting aspect of Frank Herbert's writing is this idea that these key characters like Leto and Jessica see people do things, say, this must be what's happening, ask no questions about it, and just go, here's what I'm going to do instead, and here's why. And obviously, in the sense that in this moment, the characters playing sort of the omniscient narrator is telling us what they're doing and why, and then they take action.
At the risk of going off on another diatribe, I'll try to keep it brief. I'm doing a management training class for one of our clients, and we talked about on this week in the class, we talked about this problem exactly. We observe things in the world that we can call that data, right? It's the set of things that that we see, and then we pass them through several filters and form beliefs on the basis of them. Whether we're correct about what our perceptions is a whole other question. Often we are not. So the thing that you're touching on here is the danger of believing that you know what somebody's thinking. So our intuition, our perception tells us this must be why X or Y is happening. We form a belief, and then we gather more data that enhances that belief, that strengthens it. Mm-hmm. This is a very, very dangerous thing to do, especially when we think we're using our empathy to understand someone else, because what we're really doing is projecting, right? Empathy is a good thing to have, but it is not, we're not omniscient. So we have to check up. So if you have a relationship and you tell your partner why they're doing what they're doing, and they react negatively to that explanation, this is why. It's better always to ask, or it's better to say, like, I've been in a similar situation and this is how I felt. Is that how you feel now? And you'll be surprised at how many times you'll hear, nope, I don't feel that way at all.
Right. And what's also interesting is there's also a disconnect here in this behavior between, he's not explaining why he's doing it to them. He's not saying, I know what's going on with you, and so here's what I'm doing. He's just doing things that are potentially mysterious to the other person, or have no clear motive behind them either. So I think what you're also saying is there's a gap in, there's the gap in, like, am I even right? And then there's the gap in the behavior. Like, it's one thing to tell someone, like, you know, look, I know you're really bummed about this thing that happened, and so I'm going to give you this cookie.
Yes.
The other one's like, 1, not bummed. 2, cookie, welcome, not.
I don't like cookies. Yeah. Exactly.
The other is, I assume this bad thing happened to this person, and just sort of like, hey, here's a cookie.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thanks. No thanks.
In the training, we call this cruel empathy. Because often what ends up happening is that you're rewarding without any clear indication. It's the opposite side of the coin. You know, like like the Lumberg, sorry. The wink and the shoot, the like,
Yeah.
you guys are the best, or I love what you're doing. And you know your boss is saying this to you.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean anything. You guys, you're my favorites. Like, what does that mean? It's the Michael Scott version, right? So when we give unclear feedback, anytime we give unclear feedback, we are potentially participating in what I would call cruel empathy, especially over time. What people need is clear feedback. So the version that you said, the thing where my perception is that you're bummed about this, and I want to take some step to remedy that concern. That it's worth the conversation, right? Mm-hmm. Thufir might be like, I get pudding at 3:00, and that could be all that's on his mind. Pudding and Matlock, and I got to put my feet up. Right? He's old man. Who knows what he's thinking? He could be like, in the summer of 72, I dated some young filly. Like, who knows, right? But this ideal of Leto's leadership is that this idea, by the way, of like being able to read through people and never feel compelled to discuss it. In this very short chapter, we're about to see it go fucking hilariously wrong. Right? Like hilariously and badly wrong. So maybe that's worth talking about. What happens when we assume, Mike?
Well, wait, how does it go wrong? Well, we could just jump back into the thing here.
Basically, this is not the chapter where they decide that Jessica is the bad. It is.
Well, Leto is suspect of it, but
but then they get the note. Thufir's convinced of it,
right?
And he will go on to do some pretty shitty things.
I guess I don't really remember what other stuff he does, but I know that it's been building. That
they end up in a confrontation.
Oh, right.
Dude, he's the master assassin. Like, he fucking could have killed her. Right.
Sorry, I was thinking of this from Leto's perspective, where he does essentially nothing. He decides in the next chapter to put on a strategic show and make sure to tell Paul that he's doing it.
Yeah.
But he arguably could do that without Thufir being convinced.
Yeah.
Thufir could also have said, I don't believe it, but what if we just treat Jessica like she's guilty, and then
also using your children, telling your children that you suspect your spouse, and asking them to participate in some kind of fucking
well, he says he doesn't suspect her, but he's going to act like it.
My point, I guess my point is, my children are probably listening. Nah, they won't be listening to this podcast, but look, my wife and I would there have been times where we've come close to this, but our relationship is not a subject of conversation with our children for the most part. I mean, the history, how we feel about each other, the fact that we sometimes disagree, all those things are plainly visible.
Mm-hmm.
But inviting your kids into some kind of intrigue against your partner or in support of your partner doesn't really matter, where your partner is not clear about what's happening, really psychologically bad. Like, not good for your kids, not good for you, not good for that system.
Yeah,
I would say, in my humble opinion.
Right.
I'm no Dr. Drew.
Does that, and I gather that extends to even the more basic thing of the you and her are united on like what they get to do and stuff. That go ask your father, or
ask your father. Don't tell your mother. Like, that stuff happens, but I'm usually quick to repair it. If and when it does, it's not good. Like, that's what I would say.
Isn't the go ask your father? Isn't that a act of deferring anyway?
Yeah, it's like, more that it's more that don't tell your father. Don't tell your mother.
Stuff's bad.
Here's a cookie. Don't tell your dad I gave it to you.
Yeah. That shows that there is a rift in agreement about what the parents believe.
Yeah.
Got to do a united front. My parents were really, really good about that, actually. I never got to do anything. I never got, to my recollection at least, never any sense of it would be okay with one but not the other.
Yeah.
They were exceptionally disappointing in their unity.
Yeah, that's really good. Congrats, Michaelis, you got good parenting. The only exception to that rule in my mind is that grandparents somehow get a pass on all of this.
Yeah.
There was a famous rule in our house that, fast food was like not good.
Yeah.
Not good for you and to be avoided. And so the youngest of our kids was disproportionately affected by it.
Uh-huh.
But grandma took her to McDonald's.
Uh-huh.
So she wasn't robbed of like the full experience. And I didn't feel like it's the same behavior. I'm sure psychologists out there would tell me it's the same thing. And I am absolutely willing to agree. And also it's, from my perspective, it was expected grandparent behavior. And,
yeah.
and I was okay with it. Like,
Yeah.
so long as my wife and I are united in our approach, usually things are pretty good. And if the grandparents, it could go bananas, but luckily grandma, it was just little things like, here's a piece of candy, or here, let's go get a McDonald's. Right.
And it probably much easier to manage the relationship of how much access the grandparents have compared to the spouse, because
the question
illegal.
came up too, right? Like what, why is it okay with grandma? And I'm like, because grandma has different values or holds different ideals, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I won't be taking you.
Mm-hmm.
Your mother won't be taking you, but grandma might.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, ultimately the kids have to make their own decisions about what they're going to eat and how they're right. I'm like, all I had to do is explain our perspective on it.
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to create a world in which other people there can't be competing perspectives.
Right.
Otherwise my children would not be prepared to navigate the complexities of the real world. Right. Okay. Anyway.
All right. So there's a note. It's a scrap of note. Sci-fi. It's on mimetic film. It was attempted to be acided away. Blah blah blah. So basically, in our world, it would be
high
like
tech.
a piece of it's a scrap of paper that someone was burning the edges of, and someone classic mob sort of thing. You get the thing and you try to immediately put it over a candle. But it says. Ado, as in Lado, Ado will never suspect, and when the blow falls on him from a beloved hand, its source alone should be enough to destroy him. The note was under the Baron's own seal, and I've authenticated the seal. Your suspicion is obvious, Duke said. His voice was suddenly cold. I'd sooner cut my arms off than hurt you, my lord, but what if? And Lado, Jessica, she opened her heart to me. It couldn't possibly be her. By the way, I feel like we have maybe a systematic thing here. I am extremely sure that all of the things about there being a betrayer in the household or whatever haven't had anything more, let's say, intimate. So when it falls on him from a beloved hand, I believe it's always said it's going to be someone close to him. This isn't, in my opinion, new information. It's just a slightly different wording of the same information we've been hearing from the beginning. And I don't understand Jessica, did Jessica and Lado not talk about the note from Lady Fenring saying there is a thing that says someone close to you. And again, Lado's suspicious of this from the beginning, but to the degree that Jessica went to Lado and Lado went to Thufir, talked to Thufir and said, Jessica and I were talking and she intercepted a note that said someone close to us is going to get me, this isn't beloved hand and close to you, in my opinion, are close enough that it doesn't really make that much of a difference. That's my opinion.
No, it's the same idea. And also I think Lado has better reason to reject it than the reasons he offers.
Than Thufir offers.
Yeah, for sure than Thufir offers, right? Which is, she fucking defied the Bene Gesserit order to give him a son.
Yeah.
What?
And he could have done it. She could have done this a million times. Poison, blah, blah, blah. There's so many opportunities. Why now?
There is a subtle truth here, since this chapter seems to be rooted in what is subtly hidden. That subtle thing is Jessica and Paul know things that they know more than Lado knows. that doesn't really, that's not really communicated to him. And that's also not great, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever Leto is saying or not saying, they're also withholding.
Yeah.
Withholding in a relationship, not good.
Not the best.
Not the best.
Okay, then we get to the then we get to the idea that then the next part of this conversation is Thufir then says this bit about what were they calling Paul and the all that information. I don't think there's really anything that interesting about it other than it is mentioned. Perhaps we could alert Dr. Yue and just sort of it's just a little, on reread, you realize like, oh, they just continue to not suspect this guy. He's just kind of, he's there, he's in the household, he's doing his thing. Mahdi, Bene Gesserit, prophecy, et cetera, et cetera. I think we covered that sufficiently at the beginning of this chapter. And then we see, we reach a breaking point here. And I'm going to suggest that Jeff Hackert would say there is a version of this that leads to sloppy, careless behavior, right? Mm-hmm. Once emotion comes into it. Leto kind of starts to crack. Mm-hmm. This is his thoughts. The Harkonnens have hindered and hounded and hunted me for the last time, he thought. They are dung heaps with village provost minds. Here I make my stand. And he thought with a touch of sadness, I must rule with eye and claw as the hawk among lesser birds. Unconsciously, his hand brushed the hawk emblem on his tunic. Basically, I think that's him saying he's gonna participate in Conley a little bit more aggressively than he originally planned. Yeah. And then he starts to think of, there's some wool gathering or some, the dawn is beautiful. He's thinking, this could be a beautiful place after all, maybe. And then he sees that there's so little water here that they have to collect dew off of the branches and leaves of the small desert plants here in the morning. And he's like, ooh, fuck. That's pretty rough looking at that. And that's the end of the chapter.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. So we reached the end of that chapter. Here are places you can find us. We're still trying to grow that Patreon. Decode Dune on Patreon. And then we have a Facebook community, Decode Dune. You can find us on Stitcher, Audible, all the places that you like. So that's going to be it for this week. Cool?
Yeah.
Bye. All right.
Bye. Thanks.
Like and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. And to hear more readings, become a Patreon supporter at Patreon/Decode Podcast.